What's Your Work Fit is sponsored by Hudson Davis. Start your brand's marketing and communications journey today at hudsondaviscommunications.com. I'm Dan Smolin. I built a successful executive career in marketing and communications before becoming a top headhunter and founding my own executive search firm. Now get this, every day, mainstream media runs stories in which old school bosses and thought leaders frame your work and workplace issues in ways that are often divisive and unmeaningful. And that's just crazy. The time has come for you to answer the question, what's your work fit? So that your work and career fit who you are, how you want to live, and what you want your lasting contributions to be. What's your work fit? It answers your questions and tackles the issues that keep you up at night about advancing your career in this time of workplace revolution. So let's get started. Hey, good day, everyone. Dan Smolin here from What's Your Work Fit. I hope you're all doing well. I cannot believe it's July 19th. We are blazing through this summer. Before I get started, I just wanted to wish my beloved, my wife, Marcia, a happy birthday today. If anybody's out there and happens to see her, wish her the very best. Okay, before we get started, you know my ask. If you've got a really great topic for a future What's Your Work Fit live show, a question, send it to us, and if we choose it for a future show, we will send you this, our embroidered What's Your Work Fit baseball cap. It's our way of saying thanks. To send your ideas, you can pop me an email at dan@dansmolin.com, or you can IM me on LinkedIn or wherever you're connected to me on this live show. Send in your ideas. This is what drives the experience of What's Your Work Fit. It's actual viewer questions from people like you. Okay, let's get to our great guest today. Introducing today, Stefan Bradham, coming from Washington, D.C. How you doing, Stefan?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. So Stefan is the VP of Marketing and Communications at the National Minority Supplier Development Council in Washington, D.C. He is also the VP of Mentoring for the D.C. chapter of the American Marketing Association. And through all his professional involvements, he helps organizations and people to find themselves through strategic marketing and other capabilities. It is so great to have you here today. I have a question which leads off this segment, this live show, and it comes to us from Claire. Hi, Claire. I hope you're doing well today. Claire is new to the workplace, and she has a lot of ambition. She recognizes that she'd benefit by the regular insight and advice of a career mentor to help her shape her workplace experience, but she doesn't know how to go about finding one. So Claire asks you, Stefan Bradham, how do I engage a career mentor? How do we get her started?
Yeah, so I think the first step is really looking at yourself and what problem are you trying to solve? What are the goals that you're trying to get out of that relationship? Because that depends on what type of person you go after.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found out earlier that you're doing a segment on sponsorship, mentoring, and coaching, because those are very distinct and separate items.
Right.
And so knowing what you want to get out of it will lead you down the path of what are you trying to do. Coaching usually focuses on, the skills and a performance improvement, whereas mentoring is more holistic and can be personal, professional. And then sponsorship is really within your organization, going after somebody to help you advance within that organization. And so defining, what you want out of that relationship then leads you down the path of what type of person you're looking for and whether that's going to be inside the organization or outside the organization. For me, as a marketer, was always the top marketer at the organization. So I didn't really feel like there was someone internal that I could really go to get that advice and get that from a mentor perspective. And so it wasn't until I worked at a federation where we had a federation of 23 societies, and then I had peer groups, within the larger federation, that I started to find mentors that I could go and talk to about my marketing problems, different scenarios, things like that. So I was looking outside the organization. And then the other place that I would always look to is there's an association for everything. And so find the association that represents your profession. Most likely they will have a mentor program or something like it, or they are writing articles around mentorship, sponsorship, and coaching, things like that. So to me, and I grew up in the nonprofit association space, so I always plug associations because they do provide a ton of value to the professional.
I had my mentor was a gentleman who was my college professor, the late Howard S. Kogan at Ithaca College, and he was an advertising legend, especially in New York State. He had created a slogan for a program called Ithaca is Gorgeous, and I still see the bumper stickers all over the place so many years after he was my professor. But he was my mentor, and I guess I was lucky, Stefan, in that he looked at me and I had him as a professor for a program that created a simulated advertising agency type experience, and it was part of a program that was sponsored by the American Advertising Federation to give students practical experience pitching a brand, promoting a brand, doing marketing and media for a brand, and so forth. And so after that experience, he said, you know what, there's growing opportunity in a space called direct marketing, which I knew little about back in the day, but and I did not get directly into direct marketing right out of college, but this is what happened to me. Like you, I worked in a trade association in Washington, D.C., and that gave me the space to use the ambition that I had and the skill that I kind of developed in college to learn how to be a direct marketer in that group. Yeah. And along the way, he helped me out, and he helped me get my first agency job after that experience. So you're absolutely right. Being in the sphere of the trade association space, knowing to reach out to people in that space, especially if there is a market space that interests you, is really a phenomenal idea. And my experience with that was people are really willing to help.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And my first formal experience in terms of working with a mentor was actually with the American Marketing Association DC chapter and their mentor program. And I was at a job, I had been there about 5 years, and was starting to look, but I wasn't getting the bites. I didn't understand why. High performer, have great references, all of that. And so I really looked for a mentor to really review my resume and help me translate my experience. And so that's what I was able to do with the AMA DC program as a protege in there. And because of that experience of just someone being so helpful and generous with their time and, guidance and what have you, and then I started to want to give back as well. And so a couple of years later, I joined as a mentor in that same program, and I've done that for a few years. And now I will be leading the program going forward this coming year.
What are the things that, and I realize you've mentored a few people. What are the things that typically come up that mentees want to get from their mentors? Is it inside knowledge? Is it clarity? What kinds of things pop up?
Yes, it's a lot of that. And with the program with AMADC, they really look to the protege to define what the goals are. And so that's what we're looking to do is to have that. And so I've had proteges that are looking to change jobs. And so it is really about, reviewing the resume, making sure that it describes what they're doing, things like that. I've had a couple cycles ago, somebody, she was kind of the jack of all trades, and she wanted to specialize. And so she was trying to figure out, where do I want to specialize within the marketing field? And so I, was working with her in terms of trying to get her interests and what have you, and then connecting her with people who are in that area of marketing. I'm a generalist, so I do it all. But trying to, if you want to specialize in social media, go talk to my friend Alicia. Like, she does this for a living. Like, she's the great person. You're interested in this was actually the DELP program, the diversity program at ASAE. And I connected her with that. So, and then I had another protege that, she had everything that she needed. She just needed a cheerleader. And so it was just working with her to reinforce that, no, the stuff that you were doing is amazing. And in that relationship, I stole some stuff from her. I said, this is really, really good, and it helps me solve a problem at my job. Can I use this? And, just showing her that, like, you're doing amazing work. And I'm a couple steps above you in terms of where I am in marketing, but I'm going to use what you're doing because it's better than what I've done so far. So it really kind of, from a mentor perspective, it kind of depends, and you have to cater to the goals of the mentee. And it's really a mixed bag, because you're dealing with individuals, and they have individual goals and challenges, and so you have to cater to that.
What happens when you what happened when you expressed the value that she was offering you as the mentor? What happened to you in the work that you were doing, and how did that impact your relationship with your mentee?
I think it absolutely strengthened it, and I think, a mentor-mentee relationship should be mutually beneficial. And so, and not to say that you should be getting stealing stuff from your mentees and using it, type of thing, but there is that two-way street in terms of the mentorship relationship. And for us, it was showing her that, hey, one, I'm struggling with a similar issue, so you can come and talk to me anytime, because we're dealing with it at this association as well. And two, just that cheerleader saying, like, you're doing really good work. Like, I don't know if there's an imposter syndrome, if there are other things that are thinking that you're not high performing, but you are. From an experienced marketer who's had several different jobs and multiple levels within an organization, you're doing great work. And for us, that mentor cycle ended, I think 3 years ago. And we do quarterly, happy hours to catch up and see where she's at. And actually just recently, she had taken another job and she wasn't exactly happy. And one of my friends at another organization had an open position that I thought would be great for her, and she wound up getting hired. And I'm so happy to still be a part of her relationship.
Wow.
And see what I can do to open doors for her, or let her know what the opportunities are. I mean, she absolutely got that job on her own accord, nothing to do with me. I just let her know of the opportunity. But I think it just really strengthens the relationship when you do find value in each other, and it's less of this is a finite period of time that I'm mentoring you, and it's more of a lifelong mentorship.
Sim asked this, or teased this up. The exec that I think would be a good mentor to me is always slammed, but I know he has the knowledge and experience to be useful. So how do I make the ask to him? This is a framing question. What are your thoughts?
So what we do with our proteges in our mentor program, we have an agreement that they sign right up front. And so it is all about setting expectations. And so I think that's, especially with somebody that's busy, how much can they give? And so that mentor agreement that we have, it talks about, how frequently are we going to meet? What is the length of time that we're going to meet? How frank are we going to be with each other? If there's a problem between our relationship, how are we going to look to resolve that? And so having those discussions up front make for a healthy mentor relationship, because you set those expectations up front. So I would challenge, just to have a conversation and see if that person is available, how much time that they can give to you, and start setting those expectations to see if you can build a mentor relationship there.
I want to share with our viewers and listeners how important what Stefan just said is, that you have to establish expectations, but also boundaries, because the
Yes.
person's time is valuable, as is yours. So, apropos to nothing, a few years back, I was a mentor for an organization that helped clean startups, companies in the clean energy space and affiliated spaces, bring their visions to startup status, get some initial funding,
Mhm.
go to pitches, and become operational. They're in a pre-operational, conceptual stage, and turn it into something better. So, out of my own sense of I want to help out, I became a mentor to a woman who was a doctoral candidate in Charlottesville, Virginia. And we used to meet up at a Friendly's somewhere between Fredericksburg, Virginia, and Charlottesville. What we didn't have was the structure around the the value for each of us. It became a wandering experience whereby she would get stuck on something. I didn't know how to help her. I was running out of time. We were both getting frustrated.
Yeah.
Again, the benefit is if you know going in, then you, as a busy executive, can make sure that you're getting beauty out of this for that mentee, but you're also not messing up the rest of your day,
Right.
which is very important. So thank you for bringing
And
that up.
and the other thing that we do with that too is the goal setting. And so we
Mm,
have the protege. What are you trying to get out of this, and
yeah,
have that up front too, because it's not just about when we're meeting, how we're meeting, how we're communicating, all that, but like what are we actually trying to accomplish?
right.
Because the exec you could fill out you could tell what your goals are, and the exec could say, no, that's not going to be once a month for 60 minutes. Like there's no way we're going to accomplish that in that that type of stuff. So it allows you to kind of negotiate with the goals with kind of how you're going to interact with each
Mm,
other,
mm-hmm.
as well. And with the program with AMADC, halfway through the program, you do a check-in where you are against the goals, and go back to that agreement and see where you are, see if things need to be adjusted. Because the whole goal of the program is to make sure that the protege is getting where they want to go by the end of it.
So I want to bring in Leon Glaser, who is a frequent viewer of our show. Hey, Leon, hope you're doing well. Leon says, would you equate a paid mentorship program with a mentorship that grows from a natural connection? Or is that a different sort of relationship? Interesting question. I don't know I've never experienced a paid mentorship program. And I don't know if you have experience with it. What are your thoughts on this, Stefan?
So the AMADC program is actually a paid mentorship program.
Oh,
So the protege does pay a nominal fee to be a part of it, and part of it is just to make sure that we have their buy-in, because we're bringing in marketing experts from the field to be their mentors. We want to make sure that the proteges are going to show up, they're going to take this seriously, and when things are free, sometimes you just don't. So that actually is a paid program. And so I think it is a little different because the protege is intentional. They know that
mm-hmm,
they have skin in the game,
mm-hmm.
that they know that they're not going to take it, for granted, that they are going to show up because they put money down. Not to discount that, a natural connection, mentorship relationship by any means, because I think both are absolutely beneficial. For me, in terms of if I'm looking for a mentor, I think it depends on what my goals are. And it depends on, do I have access to those people in my own network and be able to forge that kind of relationship on my own? Or, for example, when I was joining the AMADC program from a protege standpoint, I actually was looking to get out of nonprofits at the time. And
Mm,
so I needed somebody to help me translate my resume to more corporate versus nonprofit. And I didn't have those people in my network. And so I needed to go outside to somebody who has that corporate experience and who's, hiring for marketing folks and knows what they're looking for. And so I felt comfortable paying for that to be a part of that program to get that. And it was absolutely beneficial.
to my viewers and listeners in the Washington, D.C. community, you can surely appreciate what Stefan is saying, because many of us, we've either worked in the government sector or in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah.
And what with the brief exception of AOL back 25 years ago, and now to a little extent Amazon because you're setting up shop in the DC area. We don't have a lot of experience working in the private sector or in the commercial sector per se. And the language that we use in our resumes reflects that deficit.
Absolutely. Oh, I know. I remember going, and one of the reasons why I needed a mentor because I went to an interview
Yeah.
and they're rattling off, acronyms, and I'm like, oh no, those aren't nonprofit acronyms. And I'm like looking them up in the interview, trying to figure out what they're trying to say. And I was like, oh, this is a different world, and I need help.
So on our live feed today is Christine Passo, who incidentally is going to be our guest next week talking about coaching. So she's the third, she represents the third leg of that three-legged table between mentorship, sponsorship, and coaching. So, hey, Christine, how are you? She says, my mentor showed up later in my career and guided me simply by allowing me to pull out my greatness from within. Sometimes it just takes someone who believes in you and your potential. Boy, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
As we get older, we often believe the negative feelings we have about ourselves, not getting ahead, not getting noticed, whatever it might be. And I want you to talk about just as much as you can, the experiences that you've had with your mentees, Stefan, some of whom I would imagine are not entry level, maybe none of them are, and maybe speak to some of the experience that Christine is relating to here.
Yeah, and this goes back to the comment that I made earlier in terms of one of my proteges. She needed a cheerleader. She had all of the right mechanics in terms of skill sets, education, experience, and she just needed someone to believe in her and to show her what she was doing is what she needs. And I think that's important too, especially if you're trying to get into being a mentor, understanding that you may have to be a different type of mentor depending on who your mentee or your protege is. And you have to, it's just like management of people. You have to shift to what their needs are, and what have you. So, but yeah, so it really depends. And for that relationship, it was about just showing that I believed in the work that she was doing and lifting that up, stealing her stuff to show her that how good it is, that I would want if I had her at my job, like this would be amazing. And I would be praising her for it because it's really good work. But yeah, it depends on the needs of the protege.
I would imagine now in the post-pandemic era, as the workplace has changed and more people are working from anywhere as opposed to a co-location, I suppose that some of that location framing and proximity bias comes into the discussions that you as a mentor have with your mentees, or does it? Have you had any experience dealing with a mentee who said, you know what, I part of my challenge here is where I'm working and when I'm working. Perhaps it's because I have a young family to take care of and I got to get back and deal with that, or maybe I'm commuting a long distance. Have you had any experience like that, Stefan, with your mentees?
A little bit, and I think that's when you're looking for a mentor, because it's not just professional, it can be personal and professional, and the lines are so blurred nowadays because of the work from home and when work stops and when work starts.
Yeah.
So I have had some discussions with some proteges in terms of struggles with working from home and how do you cut that off. I myself have had struggles with that, and I've looked to some colleagues and what have you of when do you turn it off, like where should my desk be in my home office or in my home to make that separation type of thing. So that is absolutely part of the mentorship discussions because of the world that we're living in today.
EJ, hey EJ, how are you, my friend? She says, as a woman of color, I've benefited from a woman of color mentor who helped me to explore nonprofit exec work opportunities. She happens to be in DC as well, by the way. And she said all positive. I recognize that we don't always get to pick our mentors, but how are people of color benefited from mentorship differently than perhaps others in the workplace. I would imagine with differing experiences and maybe not having as much privilege and as much access to opportunities. Can you speak to some of the concerns that your mentees who happen to be people of color bring up and how you've been able to help them?
Yeah, and so actually the last three proteges that I've had in the AMADC program have been women of color.
Mm-hmm.
So it there in one instance in particular, I remember we were on a session and it was kind of like a Shark Tank type of session, but from a interview process, and we have some recruiters and what have you. And so two or three people were selected to do their pitch and do this kind of mock interview, and then you get real life feedback from the recruiters of what could have done better, things like that. And so my mentee came in at the last minute, so like the day of, in terms of like, oh yeah, I'll do it. So wasn't really prepared. Called it out from the start. Hey, I just realized that I was doing this. So I'm gonna wing it. I didn't prepare anything. Blah blah blah. So she went and did her spiel. She did great. One of the first comments was, "Oh, you spoke so eloquently." And so from a woman of color standpoint, that hit a nerve. And so afterwards, she had a conversation with me and she's like, "Can you believe that she said that?" And I was like, okay, like, not to discount your feelings, not to discount anything that's going on within Sight, because I'm sure this isn't the first time that you've heard that. It's not going to be the last time, and that's awful. I said, from my perspective, I think it came from when you prefaced, I have not prepared anything. I didn't do any research, what have you. And so I think she was commenting, wow, you can wing it, and you can wing it good. Not had anything to do with your race or anything like that, but like, you came unprepared, and I would have never known that because of how you spoke about that. So I said, that's how I took it, but that doesn't discount what you've heard in the past and so we kind of had that dialogue in terms of, okay, how did you perceive it? How did I perceive it? How can, in the future, if this comes up, how can you navigate this type of thing? So some of those types of things, those microaggressions in the workplace and what have you, have come up as a part of the mentor agreement or the program. So it's really about listening and trying to help them work through that and what their options are and different vantage points that they may not be seeing because they've had to deal with a lot.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you just said, and it just made me realize you created a safe space for your mentees, which, I mean, when I was mentored, that was never. Well, I'm a white guy, so I probably have had a lot more privilege than people of color. But you created a nice safe space for them to figure out how to deal with somebody who probably didn't mean harm, but the effect of it did feel like a microaggression.
Yeah.
And not to get tangled up by that, overcome it. And I'll tell you something. People of color usually develop agility skills that get them through these types of things out of necessity, right?
Oh yeah, and you would have never known that it affected her in that way because she kept it rolling. She kept, answering questions, all of that. She would have never known that, but it was after the fact. She was like, "I need to have a discussion." I was like, "Yeah, let's have it." But yeah, it's something that women of color and particularly deal with, but communities of color in general.
Have you found that your mentorship is marketable on the resume? Is it something that you find is, at the very least, a great talking point to start a conversation with somebody?
I've actually never sought it out for that, and so I've never used it in that way. I'm sure it is. I mean, to me, it helps me in my day-to-day management of people, being able to have those conversations and deep dive and that type of stuff. So I've taken things that I've done and learned in the mentor program and just applied them to my staff and working in teams and what have you. But to me, if you're gonna be a mentor, you shouldn't be doing it for a resume building type of thing.
Are-
It should be because you care about whoever is in front of you or the program. And for me, getting more involved with the AMADC is I didn't feel like I had access to those mentors when I was growing up as a marketer, and I want to make sure people behind me have that access. So that's why I do it, and that's why I get into it. And I've never actually used it for a resume builder.
and I'm sure what makes it worthwhile for you, Stefan, is making a positive difference. So what have you heard back from them that's really, been kind to your heart and said, wow, I'm really great. I could help that person do this. I'm glad that I got them there, got them to yes, or got them to their next scaffolding point in their career.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think success for me is that the relationship extends. That
Mm.
for AMADC, it's a 6-month program, and
Mm,
then technically you could wash your hands and walk away, and
right.
you're done from a mentor perspective. When they last, when they go beyond, and we still continue to catch up, and we still help each other out and talk things out, like to me, that's success, and that's
Right.
where I feel like I've done something. The one protege that now just became a director of marketing, like I am so happy for her and proud of that. And like just to be a little piece of her journey is amazing. My most recent protege, wants to get involved with the AMADC. She didn't want the program to end. And so
Wow.
wants to be involved this year in the program, and she even asked, can I do it a second time? And I was like, oh, I don't
Wow.
know about that. Like I'd have to see if that's allowed. But trying to find other ways to get her involved in the program because she just found so much worth in it. And so just those types of interactions, just know that we're doing it right.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Stefan Bradham, this has been just a great conversation. I am so thankful that you've invested some time in your day to be with us and to share your value, if you will, to mentees out there. Now I'm going to turn the table on you and ask you the question that we ask all our guests, which is, what's your work fit? What attribute, condition, experience, place, or state of mind makes work a wonderful part of your day doing other wonderful things and not the all consuming time suck of a day? So, what's your work fit, Stefan?
I I to me it's integrated teams.
Mm,
Um, the silo mentality of many organizations just kills it for me, and it's just hitting me a head against the wall, so many times. And so I'm very much it's the people of who I work with really gets me energized to do the work to keep things moving. And so it's the integration of teams and the breaking down of those silos that then I really feel and from a marketing perspective, you have to work with all departments. Like you can't work in a silo in marketing. And so being able to see to have access to and see teams come together and to put together programs and initiatives that are bigger than any one department, I think
mm.
that's my fit, is that integration of teams across the organization.
That's absolutely wonderful. One more thing, and that is, how would our viewers and listeners find you out there? How would they get in touch with you? And where would you point them to read up on you and discover some of your thought leadership?
I would say LinkedIn. So it should just be LinkedIn. And I think it's S. Bradham. But if you search my name, Stefan Bradham, I believe I'm the only one out there. But that has, would love to connect with anybody, love to share experience in terms of nonprofits, diversity, equity, inclusion, all of that. There's some links to some presentations and things out there as well, but definitely LinkedIn Connect.
That is so wonderful. I hope we can get you back on as we expand out on some of these future
Sure.
of work and workplace ideas. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.